And up here on the top left-hand side of the map, we have the red Protoss player representing Team Alpha X. He is Astrea. You know, I feel like I've already gotten off to a bad start because I said up here in the top left, but I really should have said in the bottom right because that is where Astrea is building his first pylon, his 2 gateways, and his forge.
He's so unfortunate though, because Stats is coming across the map so quickly. He's gonna scout this ridiculously fast. Like the only way you scout this any quicker, it realistically, is if you actually go to scout for it instead of going across the map, right? And that's like. That doesn't really happen. So I think this is the fastest realistic scout you get. And this gives Stats a lot of time to respond. And canceling a gate, building your own forge, that can be a huge part of this. Is well, yeah, this is already looking to be a little bit wonky as Stats as the gateway cancel. Here should be a forge, and that can re-wall off. And of course, with your own forge, you can obviously start moving in towards cannons to stop the progress of Astrea's cannons.
Yeah, this is gonna definitely get a little bit dicey for both these players now. So the idea here for Astrea is that the pylon over here on the high ground is gonna power the cannons, but eventually you expect that that's probably gonna die. So you should eventually start thinking about building the pylon, the low ground. I think he needs to start thinking about that pretty soon because the Zealot's already popped out. I guess the Zealot's not gonna whittle away at that pylon. Yeah, I guess you just utilize the wall and.
Yeah, I think he's quite happy to let it be walled off. Obviously, the high ground gives high ground vision as well.
Come on.
But
that pylon's in range of the cannon, isn't it?
I don't think so.
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, right, this is going to be Zealots that get in, but I love where Stats is going to be at defensively because his cannon's going to be up. He'll have a Zealot to defend with it, and I think he should be kind of okay. I mean, the only problem is he's only on 1 Zealot right now. He is on his way to a Robo. If he can get up to that, then great. His Zealot nearly went down very quickly here. Trying to bring it back in. He has another cannon in the mineral line. The problem is you're now taking time cleaning out Zealots, and you're not getting any cannon damage out onto these high ground cannons.
Oh, Astrea actually builds a cannon in range of the mineral line cannon. That's a big, big blunder. And the focus fire over there from Stats on that probe does prevent additional cannons from going up. 1 cannon should get canceled over here, but the cannon for Astrea should win out, especially with the Zealots adding in some extra DPS. So that is going to complicate things over here for Stats as he continues to loot probe after probe. He's now falling behind in workers. The cannon will go down. And now, remember, the Nexus is in range. Stats has to hold out until the Robo finishes, but Wardy, that's the only pylon. No, the pylon on the right. The pylon on the right.
Yeah. No, it did look scary though for a moment. That Robo is the key right now. I actually wonder if the problem is, right, Stats has to make a move because his cannon is in range of his Nexus, so he's on a timer. But with the Robo coming up, he'll have the Immortal. But the Zealots actually, well, I mean, the Zealots are kind of good against the Immortal, but I guess the Immortal can kite back. It's got a battery. It shouldn't go down. The question is, how long will it take this Immortal to get rid of the Zealots? Well, you can see not very quickly, right? And now you're maybe going to lose the Robo. That means you've got 1 cannon, 1 Immortal to make this work, and you've got to get rid of all of these cannons basically with this Immortal.
Yeah, I actually really like the decision for Astrea to leave some of the Zealots on the Robo, but it looks like he's just going to pull them off to help deal with the Immortal since the shield battery overcharge has been popped. And yes, that Immortal gets surrounded by the Zealots, but shield battery overcharge easily going to be able to power through that. Now the shield batteries are running out of energy over here, and with the overcharge now finally expiring, now this Immortal has to be a lot more careful because, yeah, the shield batteries aren't really healing this up. The Zealots getting a lot of damage, and Immortal goes down.
Yeah, that's so bad. A new one is on the way. Yes, he should stop talking to Cybercore. He should just go for the Nexus. If he kills this Nexus, he wins the game. And, well, I mean, he's going to get it, right? Yeah, it's gone. I was a little worried that 1 cannon was hitting the Cybercore, but the cannons on the bottom side obviously coming online helps out with that. And there you go. What have you got from Stats? Supply blocked. So it doesn't even matter. You can't build anything. It's going to be too much. And that's GG. Astrea. Fear Dragon gets this game 1.
Coming out from the sewers, Astrea invites Stats into them like a clown, looking very, very, very innocent, but eventually kind of stabs him with a knife and says, "Welcome to North America."
Mate, I'm pretty sure this build he never left the sewers. I'm pretty sure this build developed there. You know, maybe like crawled out as he got cannons onto Stats' main base, but everything else of this game was very dirty.
Yeah, honestly, a really, really nutty game number 1. That is honestly like a build that I'm actually not sure how many times Korean players, especially like top Protoss players in Korea, face off against that, because I feel like that is one of the more niche things or cheeses that you ended up seeing, and it kind of got a little bit of popularity, I know, in the non-Korean scene. Maybe you would know a little bit more, Wardy, if you've seen any Koreans ever do that or face off against it very often.
Yeah, I remember Trap played a whole bunch of games against it. I think Zaun likes to do this a lot. I actually think all of the Korean Protoss players have toyed with this build. And I think the defense is well figured out, right? You get that forge up, and then you get your cannons in range, and it was just a little bit, everything happened a little bit too quickly. And I think only having one Zealot out is actually a little bit of something which shouldn't have happened too. I feel like there should have been maybe a second unit also from stats, because I usually see, like, you usually fighting over getting like a second Stalker out or something, right? Yeah, he went quickly into the cannons, but then he also only had one cannon up in range, and it was just everything that was kind of there, but then not quite enough of it. So it was I feel like he was so close to the defense. And I feel like you play that again, and it's like, well, I went wrong here, here, here. And you can pinpoint the 2 moments where he's like, right, I do that differently. It's very different altogether. So yeah, I definitely think it's something Stats is experienced with. I think he messed up a little bit here, but these are just the small errors that make this build so good, because it's the little things that basically end the game.
Yeah, exactly. The difference of 25 or 50 minerals and not being able to get up another cannon or get up another pylon or something in time to, wall in your cannon can make all the difference here. But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be starting in game number 2 as we move into the bottom left-hand side of the map. On top of the red Protoss player from Team Alpha X, sitting up 1-0, he is Astrea.
In the upper right-hand side, our blue Protoss, the last remaining Korean, it is Stats.
So, Wardy, we do have a nice low ground pylon over here, and this is one of those PvP things that I think we've seen a decent amount of the time, but I think the fun bit is gonna be a Nexus first here for Astrea.
Yeah, you know what? I love it. He showed he wasn't afraid of putting, early expansions down the other day against Trap. And this is brilliant because, you know what? Stats can see it, and Stats can decide if he wants to try and do something about it. But I don't think there's necessarily a free win build against this anymore. Like, I don't think you can necessarily say, oh, Nexus first, let me drop a robo. Like, yeah, that's strong against it, but it's not like oh my god, I can, thoroughly do this. You can see here, Stats is kind of laughing. He's like, wow, really? You did this? But it's perfect because, if you 1-gate expand, this Nexus gets blocked by this probe scout. So the Nexus first kind of lets Astrea get away with it, unless Stats tries to do something punishing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious what exactly Stats is going to do to react to this, because I know this is almost a little bit of a retelling of the story that we saw with Neeb versus Astrea, where Neeb kept trying to find ways to punish it, wasn't really able to find a great way, and he even talked about it in one of his interviews later on, saying, yeah, it's really hard to actually punish this kind of thing. So maybe Stats is going to have the answer. We do have a nice little wall coming on up over there, but also Astrea moves forward to the probe, finds this proxy pylon and the robo that's going to be coming down.
Yeah, it's just almost so obvious that it's like, whatever, you can see it if you want to, right? He knew where this pylon was, he sees the robo, and now the question is, can you do this? Can you make this work, basically, as Astrea, defensively?
Morty, there's one weird thing. The Zealot is going to get there before the Stalkers get there, and that pylon's already lost all of its shields. I don't think that pylon goes down, but okay.
I mean, the second pylon probably finishes before it goes down anyway, right? So overall, not much difference. The only thing is if you get rid of it, then maybe you could argue it forces the other pylon to finish up or so.
Yeah, it shouldn't be the end of the world over here because, like you said, it's not exactly going to supply block him or anything either. And actually, the Zealot might end up going down in exchange for that. So a little bit of a trade, I guess.
It's still nice, right? It's still 100 minerals for 100 minerals, essentially, because you still need this pylon. Now 2 Stalker show up, so it's a continuation as well. Now you've got a Zealot advantage in this Stalker fight, and he gets the first 2 shots off and make that 2 more Fear Dragon. And this is really good. Now there's an extra Stalker about to show up, and unfortunately he's only gotten shield so far, and that probe actually helping out a little bit as well. And he's unfortunately been in range there, so this Stalker will go down. And, well, then the Immortal shows up from Stats as well, and Astrea has 1 Stalker left out on the map. This is worrying because now you're missing units that are meant to be here for the defense, and it gives Stats a good head start on picking away. I mean, if he kills this pylon, this game ends.
Yeah, that's going to be a really, really scary proposition, especially since the shield battery isn't even done to heal that up. So now we end up seeing the Stalkers at least able to chip away at that Immortal since the the Immortal shields are gone. But that is going to completely halt everything right now. And now the War Prism just warps in more Stalkers. Like, what do you do as Astrea?
Yeah, you need everything, right? You just need everything right away. You need to have all of your units to be able to push this back. And yeah, I mean, it's rough right now. You've got a shield battery trying to keep the warp gate alive, and it will just about do that as he gets an extra stalker out. But the only thing I say is Astrea's got a pylon in stats' main. If he could get somehow a warp in of a depth, if he can somehow afford that, that can turn this game around, because Astrea is up 12 workers. He can take some losses, and then if you do damage the stats behind it as well, maybe. But you've got to be able to fight this army at some point. That's what the Stargate is for. Let's see if Astrea can buy enough time.
Yeah, we have the shield battery overcharge healing up that cyber core to maybe also heal up the gateways if he needs just a bit more time to get that first warp in. He's going to warp in 2 sentries, so the force fields look like they're going to be pretty important over here just to buy time for that Stargate to find some value. Like you said, there's actually that pylon, but also we see a second pylon going up over there right next to it. It's coming out from Stats, so Stats is recognizing as a warping in at home.
Yeah, he's just going to make sure he keeps an eye on it. He knows anything that's happening. Cybercore goes down, a new one starts. Now the Void Ray begins. I understand the need for sentries, right? The force fields to buy you time. But by warping in sentries, he used all of his gas. So then this Void Ray couldn't do anything, right? Like, you couldn't build the Stargate or build the Void Ray. So the Stargate couldn't do anything. So I don't know what the right choice is, but I mean, it feels like this is just too much. This got out of control early. I think it comes down to those early Stalkers. You can't really lose those. You give stats an advantage like that with this kind of build, and, well, this happens.
Yeah, this is going to be pretty brutal. Even with the Void Ray coming on out, the shield batteries are a little too far for it to actually utilize. So it's going to try and maximize the potential with a high ground area, but eventually gets sniped off. Shield battery overcharge finally comes off cooldown, but with so much DPS, Stats looks like he's going to be able to take the aggression to Astrea. Tie up the series 1-1.
Look at Stats. He's like, yeah, you can't do that to me. You know who I am. Man? He's like, I'm the shield of Aya. You don't get to be defensive. That's my job.
I know, but now honestly, like you were saying, the 2 stalkers, like it looked really promising for a moment there for Astrea, because you were saying he was getting these like surprisingly decent trades as he got so aggressive, but then ended up losing one of the stalkers over there. I don't even know what happened to the second stalker, if he recalled it or if he just lost it trying to pull it back in or something, but that's just a little bit too much DPS to lose out on early on, and you just can't really protect your pylon or your wall at that point.
That's really tough. We're going to continue this series after a quick little break here. Astrea and Stats go into game 3. Tied up 1-1, some quick games so far, some aggressive games so far for some very different reasons for your Dragon. We've had Astrea saying, I want to be cheesy, I want to be dirty in game 1. And then he tries to completely flip the switch in game number 2, only for Stats to say, no, you don't get to do that versus me.
Yeah, it was a very, very cool reaction there from Stats, and we saw like how powerful that can be, especially when Astrea ends up losing those early stalkers we were talking about. But honestly, Wardy, that's like, I wanted games like that in this series, but I don't want every game to be like that in this series. And you know what? I have a funny feeling this is going to be the game we get to go more normal.
I hope so. As in the bottom left-hand side, our Blue Protoss player, it's Stats.
And up here in the top right-hand side of the map, with his pylon in his main base where it's supposed to be, it is Astrea.
Yeah, the size of this map definitely says, hey, let's play a nice long game, right? There's a reason we talk about this being the big map right now, where it's disliked in certain matchups. For PvP, to me, this is your perfect chance to get up into a Stargate opener, right? Maybe test the waters on that one. Stargate or maybe like Blink or so, something that gives you a bit more map control, a bit more mobility to help you traverse just the length of this map.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that has been a common trend we've seen in PvP for this map. But then we also get into the fun part of PvP, which is all the metagame, mind gaming that goes on, right? Oh, if this is a good map for Stargate, then maybe I'll open up with Phoenix instead of Oracle first, or maybe, you know, because they'll think this is a good map for Stargate, they might open up with something besides the Stargate to mind game me. So I should actually go with the Oracle for. It's just, it gets into like the craziness, and I feel like at some point you just kind of stop and say like, okay, look, if I overthink this, it's not going to be helpful. I'm just gonna do my thing.
Yeah, no, it's there's so much that can happen, right? And Astrea already a bit of a mind game. I don't think that pylon's going to do anything. It's just that thing we saw so much in PvP a while back, where every game had a pylon from either play out of the base, whether it's for a real proxy or look what I can do kind of proxy. You don't know if I'm proxying or not. So it still has something of that effect, as obviously nowadays proxies are just depowered and less valuable because of the super battery, as both players open the depths here.
Yeah, I actually, as you were mentioning the double adepts and stuff being opened up here, but even actually as a follow-up, I actually love those proxies just because I've seen so many times at PvP, one player's getting hyper aggressive and the defensive player just finds an opportunity to say, well, you know, I did make that proxy pylon earlier on. I have a spare warp-in, just so I can barely defend while sneaking out this warp-in of 2 adepts. Send them across the map, your entire army is on my side of the map. This is how I equalize, and maybe I need to pull probes or something to defend, but I'm going to kill more with my adepts. So I really, really like just seeing those proxy pylons out there.
Well, Stats is going to be aggressive. Robo's coming up. I don't think you really go Robo expand all that often anymore. It's also 2 Stalkers next as well, whereas 2 Sentries for Astrea is like, oh yeah, look at me, ready to place my expansion. So this might be a really good read from Stats. We'll see how aggro it can be. You can still expand behind this. It is only 2 gateways. It's that 3rd gateway that gets added on. That would be where you're like, okay, right, Stats, we're going for this, huh? So I think this is going to be an expansion behind it from Stats, but definitely with the intention of being the first to strike.
Adepts come forward, and Stats is on top of that shield battery being made, so he's going to be able to block these adepts out, and the probe will even maybe be able to escape out for a little bit until the shades catch up. On the other side of the map, I think we do see that those adepts for Stats are kind of just idling outside of the natural. Taking a look at his vision, he's already spotted out the Nexus and the shield battery and the pylon, the low ground, everything. So he knows that Astrea's expanded. He knows that he's got that defensive setup.
Yeah, what's Astrea got at home? Just the 4 sentries and 2 stalkers. I want to believe there's potential, but actually, you look at what Stats is working with, there's not really that much. Like, if there was an Immortal in that prison, then I'm like, oh, yeah, let's go. But it's just a few gateway units, and to me, it feels like Astrea has a good setup to deal with this. He'll be faster to the Twilight Council. And typically, yes, you're going to start getting like an Observer and stuff up now, but the Robo doesn't usually come into use for a little while from here on out in PvP, unless you end up adding on Immortals, which is generally more of a, oh no, I need to be defensive play anyway, so it's more situational. So yeah, we'll see what Stats can do. A couple of extra warp-ins here will give him some potential pressure. Hey, if he just jumps up into this main base, that can be deadly. He's got force fields, remember, and if he just catches Astrea super far to position, that will get the job done for your Dragon. He is in range of so much important stuff. There's a recall into the main.
Yeah, Recall's gonna recall most of the units. There are still 2 Adepts over there on the low ground. Sentries are gonna end up fighting over here with Guardian Shield being popped for both sides. Some Forces trying to keep these units from easily loading up to the Warp Prism, but they still get picked up. And this is starting to get a little bit awkward, I feel like, for Astrea, just because Stats is doing a good job with the micro, but Stats doesn't have any area to micro too much further back. So that's the one downside. I still think he's winning out with just raw units, though.
Yeah, he really is. I didn't think it was going to be quite this successful, but Astrea just had no idea about it. Like, he just wasn't thinking, oh, Prism into the main. And everything is just a little too slow. He obviously no defensive structure up in this main. There's no battery or anything. Now you're diving for the Prism to stop Warpins. That's great and all, but how much does he lose in the process? Well, a couple of extra Stalkers. He does get the cleanup here, Astrea, but it costs him 15 probes. And all the things Stats was behind in later Nexus, doesn't matter. He just killed more probes, right? He's now got vision. He knows what's up. He's behind on Blink, but he has the Immortals he can now build. This is one of those situations where having the Robo up is extremely useful.
Yeah, that's going to be really brutal. And remember, the Warp Prism survived, so Stats actually still has the potential to continue being aggressive. If Astrea is just saying, okay, I need to catch up, I'm going to just do nothing but warp in more probes, because he actually has to go and remake some more Stalkers. He only had 1 Stalker, which is not enough to actually push back even just a minor warp in of these units.
This was so sad because these probes actually pulled, but then, and the Adept hit to the low ground too, but they actually didn't mineral walk, so they got stuck on the Adept, and so 5 of them went down where maybe only 2 or 3 should have gone down, and then the Adept shade to the natural. Now they're going to shade back in the main. You know what? This is just, you're just not allowed to mine as Astrea. You know, he's got nothing because he's just not mining this entire time. His 20 probes are running around silly. He can't do anything with it, and that's how Stats is going to take game 3, and we have got a very quick PvP series on our hands for you, Dragon.
You know, I didn't think the game was going to look like that, but I mean, if you do think about it and you look back at that fight, it was just a lot of full health or close to full health units there for Stats, which, you know, produce off of those 2 gateways, same as Astrea. But Astrea had invested into like the Twilight Council that hadn't gotten value yet. And whereas Stats had gotten the Warp Prism, which was continuously basically blinking back each unit that took damage on the shields, got it to the backside, did that typical Protoss micro where you allow your units in the back to regen some shields, and you started to see the difference being made there where Stats actually just had the extra investment into the Robo really paying off, whereas Astrea hadn't had his investment pay off yet.
And it's the gateway units as well, right? You know, you're talking about Stats who never stop producing units, right? And you only build 3 sentries or so. Again, even that can make the difference, and Astrea cuts a couple of units to get the Nexus down a bit faster. A Nexus which took like a 5-worker lead only to have it shot down moments later. You don't benefit from that resource advantage because you haven't had anything else come online. So yeah, it's one of those scenarios where defender's advantage is meant to help, right? You get back, you're able to micro, maybe you pull like a couple probes, but you're meant to have like a shield battery or something, and he just has nothing in that main base. You have to fight, otherwise stuff gets empowered. You're forced into a fight you don't want to take, and yeah, it was just, I feel like Astrea had the information as well. He saw the hallucination. He's like, oh cool, you've got a Robo up. I feel like he should have known the Nexus was a bit later too. Maybe he missed that, but I feel like the pieces of the puzzle were there for him to put into place and to start responding to it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And just being able to recognize that the units were going to be coming for him, not only just coming for him, but even once he realized the units were there, like he recalled a lot of his units, but then he actually didn't end up recalling 2 of his Adepts that were sitting on the low ground for a lot of the beginning of that fight. Just there's small things that I think could have absolutely been adjusted there. Like you also think about the fact that the shield battery was made, but it was on the low ground. Even if you don't recall the Adepts there, like at least get some value from the shield battery by like attacking from that little choke point there with the Adepts, so you can utilize the shield battery. Like the small things for sure. But at the end of the day, Stats definitely just executes that really, really well timed attack and knocks Astrea down. So now Stats gonna be up 2-1.
Yeah, match point for Stats. No mistakes allowed now from Astrea. That's where the pressure might start getting to him a little bit. Don't think Astrea is the kind of guy to crack under pressure, by the way. I gotta say, that's one thing I've been very impressed about with Astrea. Like, I don't think he's ever been like, oh my god, he should have won this series, but then the stress got to him. When he's been in big matches, you know, qualifying for GSL and stuff like that. So, yeah, credit to Astrea for that one. As we start up here to the top right-hand side of Pillars of Gold, 1 map away from the semi-finals, it's Stats.
And down here in the bottom left-hand side of the map, we have the red Protoss player from Team Alpha X. He is Astrea. So, Wardy, game number 1. Oh, actually, no, game number 2. Game number 1 was the 2-gate cannon. But game number 2, we ended up seeing Astrea go for that low ground pylon, go for like a Nexus first and everything. And that's partially because also that map is a little bit nicer with having the high ground ramp and everything. This game, he's not going for a Nexus first or anything, but he's still going to go for the low ground gateway. But Stats is also doing something similar.
They're both wanting to 1-gate expand, and they're both going to end up blocking each other's 1-gate expand so that they basically 1-gate tech expand, right? Typically, a Stargate comes down before you expand here because you'll just have the money to do it. This has just become very regular in PvP, like 1-gate expand on a map with this ramp is fine. And even if one guy goes 2 gates and they get the block on the 1 gate, like is what's happening here, it doesn't really matter that much. It actually leads you into pretty even positions, and it's kind of fine. I was just talking to Hostam about it yesterday because I actually felt it's like, you know, how does this keep happening? Do you not feel behind if you're 1-gate expand and you get blocked? And he's like, no, because you can just spend your money in other ways, right? You don't get a 2nd gate, you'll just put that Stargate down or something, and from there, you'll still spend your money, you're still fine, you're still making a good amount of units. So, yeah, this is something that everyone's kind of dealing with lately. This is completely normal stuff, and obviously the blocks will try and delay stuff for as long as possible, but only because they're both blocking each other, right? You know, you can't not block the guy if he's blocking you.
Yeah, looks like Astrea, even though he did get his pylon down a little bit later on, is still just going to try and delay this as long as possible. Gets up a cyber core as well.
That's nice.
Doesn't decide to cancel anything. And, well, I don't know. Does Stat still have the probe? Okay, yeah, Stat still has the probe alive inside the natural, as he should. Gets out on his own cyber core. It's going to just be annoying for both sides.
Yeah, it's just such, like, this is basically a mirrored build. It's just such a weird mirrored build to talk about, right? Because they're both building cyber cores that block and all this. But like I say, this is like the norm right now in PvP. Yeah. If you try and 1-gate expand, this happens to you. So they will do to each other as they have done to themselves. And, well, that's the first real difference, right? A 2nd Stalker versus a Sentry. So Astrea will be a little bit more gas invested on his gateway units. And that maybe has a bit more presence on the map, and then potentially some faster tech as well, as we'll see those Nexus going down, and in a couple of moments we'll get to see what that gas is going to be spent on.
Yeah, I do think that going for sentries is a very Astrea thing about his PvP. He really does love getting up those sentries for the continuous hallucination, Phoenix Scouts, and just keeping an eye on his opponent, but it does come at the cost of a little bit of that firepower, as we already see. Stats is feeling confident enough that, you know, I think I can poke out a little bit. I don't think this should be getting too much done, especially since, you know, it's not like there's a proxy pod. It's not like there's any proxy for reinforcements, but this is still just an annoying number of units, forcing out a force field that's going to actually delay any hallucinated Phoenix Scouts that Astrea would have wanted to go for.
That's such a dangerous force field, though, because he nearly got caught, and if his army gets cut in half there, Astrea just wins that fight. He just gets 3 units, so... I do like this a lot for Stats. It's a bit of pressure. He sees the blink as well. But as you compare it to Astrea, you just mentioned lack of hallucination, right? So he doesn't necessarily know he's up against blink of his opponent. So I like that a little bit more from Stats. He's just a little bit better in the know. And it's stuff like now he doesn't have to build a shield battery. So, you know, that's 100 minerals that Astrea invests. And Stats is like, okay, cool. I don't need that. And that's a little bit of an advantage. Ooh, that's kind of funky, huh? 2 Zealots hallucinated.
That is extremely strange. So, like, here's why it's really weird to me, Wardy, specifically, because if he was trying to like fake out Astrea somehow, you would have left those Zealots at home, right, for those Phoenix to scout.
Do you think he just meant to press Phoenix and then he pressed Zealot?
Oh, yeah, they're right next to each other.
Yeah.
So it's X versus Z, which is right next to each other on the keyboard.
That's what I'm thinking as well, but it just seems like... But that's not the only mistake here. It's the fact he made 2 of them. Like, that's also a...
No. When you hallucinate Zealots, you get 2 of them. If you hallucinate probes, I think you get 4. Yeah.
What?
There is actually a weird scenario where, for example, if you want to scout a proxy, it's actually faster to hallucinate probes instead of a Phoenix, because even though those Phoenix will move faster, you can send the probes in 4 different directions.
Oh my god. You know what? Like, I feel like I knew about the probes. I did not know about the Zealots. That's how rarely you see like a hallucinated Zealot, right? Like, I cast a lot of StarCraft. I think this might be the first time I've ever seen a hallucinated Zealot.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts, actually. There's almost no scenario where you'd want to make the Zealots, basically.
Yeah, I know, because usually if you're trying to scare someone off, you're like, I'll hallucinate some Stalkers or something as well. Like, look at my gas investment or so. And that's more of a fake out, too, because you're like, oh, look at the gas I've got in this army. Like, yeah, that's actually wild. Wow. Yeah.
It's like, oh man, look at my slow zealots without charge. Aren't you afraid right now? They're just like, all right, buddy, I guess I'll warp in 2 sentries.
Yeah, it's it was obviously just meant to be Phoenix then, as obviously we've seen Phoenix since then. He continues to scout. It was just how unfazed he looked as well, though, because it was like, I looked at his camera as well, and he's just like, yeah, this is normal. Like, 2 zealots hallucinate, just wandering across the map.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, guys, as much as we're talking about it, because it is a funny thing that happened, like, it's not going to be too impactful. Both these players decided to kind of just continue playing this out. And Stats had already gotten a good scout, like we were talking about before, with that little push out. So we already saw that it was going to be probably council for Blink and everything coming out from Astrea. He wasn't going to be super worried about some super fast all-in or anything. So at the end of the day, like, they basically just continue to get their Hallucinating Phoenix scouts out later. And we do see a little deviation over here with the Dark Shrine coming out over here for Astrea nice and early on. And not really adding on nearly as many gateways as early on in Stats.
Yeah, this is... he's obviously going Dark Shrine, so that's going to be interesting to see if it can work out. Against Stats, who already has 2 observers up. His scouting's been pretty good throughout. It's just the fact that Stats has the 3rd earlier, right? Everything that Stats has done has just been a bit more eco-focused. And so, yeah, Astrea's have like a slight army supply lead, but not in a way in which he can do anything. He's just clicked on the Dark Shrine, so he 100% knows what's coming his way. He's going to place cannons down. And I get a little bit worried for Astrea because that's an investment earlier in the game than you usually make DTs. Like, it's never bad to have DTs, but if you make DTs now, it takes away from something else. Whereas if you just add DTs late game when you're floating money anyway, it's like, okay, cool, whatever. But right now, if they don't deal damage, it's an investment you've made. Your opponent did not. And okay, you're forcing out cannons, but there's a gas differential there. And I love the fact that right now, Astrea has not made DTs because he's just said, right. Okay, now he morphs in 2. I get it, Astrea. I get it. You don't want to listen to Wardy all the time, but they're back at home, right? So they're not like immediately like, okay, let's get into the base. They're a little bit more passive. He hasn't been rushing them out the second the Dark Shrine finished.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're absolutely right on a lot of that. And I think that really most of the value for the ZTs is going to be as they poke forward just to see if there's some opportunity for damage. But if and when they don't find it, I'm hoping that they just return home, turn into an Archon, because that's where he's going to actually find some value with it, trying to help deal with like large charge lot armies and everything. We actually do see a funny little skirmish here.
This is actually really smart. He noticed the observer with the zealot he led with. Right, like that is a play from Astrea, who then turns the DTs around. He's like, cool, I see the observer, not going to do anything, preserve them. And that's fine, because I think the DTs always will have an option. There's if he was going to start warping in like 3 or 4 DTs and running them at the base, then I'm like, I'm not too sure. Why are there 3 or 4 DTs right now? I don't know.
Oh my God, Wardy.
I'm done. I'll shut up about the DTs.
Listening to you. It's like he's listening to you and saying, no, Wardy, screw you.
I mean,
I'm really worried right now for Astrea because that is a lot of zealots in this army. This 6 DT run by, yes, it can do an insane amount of damage very quickly, but you are going to need some Archons, Astrea.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, at first I was like, okay, warp them in more Archons, but like, I don't like I just don't see the value in 6 DTs when you know your opponent's at least somewhat prepared. I mean, you can argue here, obviously, 6 DTs is a surprise, so you're going to start doing more damage, but there's an observer still here. If he just had a warp in available, Stats would deal with this very quickly. Unfortunately, he doesn't have a warp in available. Super Battery doesn't do anything to protect the actual shield battery itself, but Stats is still going to attack in on the other side. Are these DTs really going to work out? But now they might.
Yeah, at the same time, there's a Warp Prism in the main base of Astrea that's also warped in a bunch of Zealots, and we end up seeing, yes, a lot of probes went down on Stats' side. Actually, the Warp Prism gets forced back, and now Stats is trying to break on through. He's doing a lot of damage over here, but surprisingly enough, Astrea is actually trading a lot better than I thought he would. If he recalls those DTs after killing the 3rd, turns them into some Archons and holds his ground, I actually could see a world where he does this.
Well, I mean, the shield batteries and cannons on this base, I think, made Stats kind of stumble and falter about what he wanted to do. Plus the fact that Stats was also down the upgrade when this fight started. He was maybe trying to wait out for that. And I think Astrea's got a hold here, Fear Dragon. I'll put my hands in the sky. I was so wrong. Those DTs were amazing. He used them in the perfect way. Like, best case scenario, they did so much. They basically forced Stats to all in here, and I mean, it's not done yet. Stats is still pushing up the ramp. He gets the disruptor. Okay, it's not over yet because now you're fighting away from the shield batteries and cannons that were a little bit problematic before. We did just lose an immortal though, and that's one of the big parts of his army. That's kind of good. He warps in some Archons. Oh, this is kind of crazy for your Dragon.
Wardy, just one weird thing is that both observers are over here. Astrea still has an observer that's sitting on the north side of his natural, like on a little bit further north. I honestly do feel like that actually is a potential pathway to just clean this up, is you just pull your observer back and try and snipe that off your opponents.
Yeah, I mean, if you get rid of the observers, and then you can obviously maybe just get some DTs in here, that would be huge, but right now it feels like Astrea. Yeah, I mean, base trading can work too. Here comes a couple of DTs. The observers are still here. The DTs are just going for the huge power play. Like, we can do so much damage before you can clean us up. It's kind of working. A lot of Archons going down. It's so close, Fear Dragon. The thing is now Astrea's also lost a lot of probes. I guess this kind of becomes a question of, I lost my natural versus I lost my third, and obviously losing your third is generally worse, and Astrea has a defensive position on the third. So if another attack was to come, he could just camp out that position. So Astrea should be ahead here.
Yeah, I mean, you also just look at the unit count. It's 17 Stalkers and 9. Stats lost more at the very end, especially with the recall. He lost another 3-4 Stalkers. Astrea literally walking across the map right now. I think he's just going to actually have a lot more units than stats. Pending the micro, I was about to say, not quite like that, but pending the micro, I do actually think Astrea can still continue to pressure here while he gets up his stuff back at home. Even if he doesn't kill stats, I think he can at least potentially trade out like a little bit.
I can't get over those DTs, man.
Oh my god.
They were just amazing as the blink comes in the main. I mean, this is where Astrea is at right now. He has more stuff. He can make plays like this. He's the aggressor, so Stats has to be defensive, and if Astrea finds openings, he'll get damage done, and this was great. This was well played by Astrea. He obviously had a plan. He knew what he wanted to do with DTs, which is force Stats to stay at home. If Stats doesn't stay at home, you can power up from that, gets another snipe. Astrea. It's all about him right now in this game 4.
Yeah, funny enough, that was the only observer on Stats' side of the map now, so he has to remake another one. Even though he's got a cannon at the natural, he doesn't actually have a cannon over at the third base, so the DT comes back in, starts peeling off even more probes, and that worker lead going even more in favor of Astrea. I have to say, Wardy, you were talking about like, oh man, the DT's really worked out. I actually think of the players in StarCraft, I think Astrea has some of the best crisis management of bad situations.
I thought you were going to say he has the best DT, so I'm like, no, Fear Dragon. That's you. I know it is. Don't you worry.
Oh, man. Well, you know, if your DTs have gotten this much value, Wardy, you should get Blink.
Yes, that was what kind of caught me off guard by the extra 4 DTs as well, right? It's not like he had Shadow Stride where you're like, okay, I'm going to blink in with them. It's like you're banking on these DTs just walking in, and they did. It was just still such a crazy concept to me, but again, I need to get over this because it's done, it is gone, it's happened. And Stats right now, I mean, Stats is trying to hold on. Army supply, similar. Obviously, the work account is the big disparity here, but I guess you got to think that the income advantage hasn't been so bad until just now because they've both been stuck on the same amount of bases. Astrea didn't have the bases to make 60 probes work anyway, so it's only just now that Stats is starting to mine less. And that's obviously now, you know, that's the issue. Now Stats has to do something, but that's why his army supply is still comparable.
Yeah, you have to remember, though, also that Astrea was investing into the Disruptor tech. He's got 2 Robos already compared to the 1 of Stats. So even if Stats had a Robo Bay done, he would not be producing even nearly as many Disruptors as quickly. So Astrea's already got out now 4 Disruptors. If he actually does end up colliding into Stats because Stats decides to attack into him, that's going to be a really, really scary prospect. I actually think as soon as Stats sees some of those Disruptors coming forward, he might just immediately back off and say, no, I actually don't want a piece of this right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of impossible to attack into Disruptors, right? When you've got none of your own because you can't force any positions 100% about what your opponent can do. And yeah, for that, I don't really see much opportunity for Stats. I mean, what can he... His army now is also Stalkers, Archons, and an Immortal. So it's not like you can just run around with Stalkers either. You're kind of going to have to use those Archons and the Immortal if you want a chance. And yeah, I'm not really sure what Stats does to win a fight. You basically need to get the jump on the Disruptors somehow, clean out all of them, and then you're obviously in an advantage. But how does that ever happen without losing anything? Well, probably just doesn't.
I mean, to your point, I do agree that is like the way he can do something. And for that reason, I actually do like how aggressive Stats has been with his army, right? He has not been at home with his army this entire time. He has been moving around the map, sniping off stray Stalkers that are spotting, sniping off a pylon over here, because yeah, if Astrea did decide to move around and you slightly miscontrol your Disruptors or your army, that is where the Stalkers just pounce on them, snipe them all off, and suddenly you're back in the game. But this is a really nice counterattack over here for Astrea. He's going to shut down the 4th base and kind of put the pressure on to Stats, setting a timer saying, all right, no, you don't get a 4th base this easily if you're going to be this aggressive. You have to fight into me, and I know you don't want to right now.
Yeah, that really is the issue, right? It's just Astrea setting up so many ways in which Stats is the one that has to make a move, and yet he can't make the move, and that at some point means that Stats has to make a bad decision. He's forced into it. Right now, he's going back home. That's not necessarily a good decision down at base in this scenario, right? So, yeah, it's tough. There's not really a good option here from Stats. You got to make something work at some point, but those disruptors just make that nigh on impossible.
Yeah, DTs are actually moving back up to the top left again to kill that off, but there is an observer with a handful of stalkers and an Archon there, so at least this time Stats should have the defense, and he is going to be able to react to that pretty quickly. Snipes off those DTs, will be able to establish that 4th base for now, and might even get the last DT. No. Oh my God.
Yes.
That's the round. That's the round.
Yeah, that was a cute little blink.
You know, here's the thing, Wardy. Like, okay, not going to pretend like this is a good situation for Stats, but he has gotten up to disruptor tech and he is producing disruptors. Yes, of course, it is a massive disadvantage to be at such a ridiculous disruptor disadvantage, right? 9 to what's soon going to be like 4. But we've seen so many PvPs where you get one good disruptor shot, even on your opponent's disruptors, and all of that is immediately negated.
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing is with disruptors, it keeps every PvP competitive because nobody's ever truly out if they've got disruptors on their side. As you're going to see, that's a big blink, and I mean, a disruptor shot right now, Astrea can't necessarily blink away. It was a perfect split, though, to counter the problem he walked into.
This gets a little bit awkward now for Astrea, though. He doesn't have any of his disruptors with his army. He's trying to pull them back over. I think he should have blink off the cooldown again, so he does blink back, saves the majority of the army. Got a little bit dicey there. Even backing off a second later would have been disastrous.
He obviously didn't think he needed his disruptors, right? Because he's like, okay, I'm just playing a mobile army that can get away. Then he's like, oh, you've got disruptors. I'll bring my disruptors to the party as well. Then this is the game we're playing. That's another blink in. I don't see Stats' disruptors. I guess they're a bit too far back to capitalize on that, which is a shame because those blinks are blinks that shouldn't really work in these scenarios. That's a perfect blink, of course, to the left-hand side, and he's safe to do that one because the disruptors are nowhere near. And Stats just isn't finding the chances to capitalize on the moves that Astrea is making, and that's a disruptor shot here, Dragon.
That is certainly a disruptor shot that Astrea is going to be happy about. Might even be able to snag this Immortal at the very end. Astrea cannot blink. Oh my God, he's going to blink forward aggressively. Oh my God, Astrea. The Blink have soft blink on cooldown now. It's going to be a potential disaster. Disruptors for both sides are connecting in massive waves, though. And at the end of the day, Astrea walks away ahead in supply. Wardy, I was literally saying, like, Astrea, you can't blink forward. He blinks forward.
I don't disagree. I actually feel like his disruptors to try and save the stalkers could have been all killed as well. There's a disruptor shot that had a choice. It was disruptors or stalkers, and he chose stalkers. I think he could have got the disruptors, and that would have been huge. It's so hard to make those decisions in the moment, though. You never know what's going to happen. Right now, Astrea is trying to try and control. It's difficult because he's controlling two different sides of this fight. Stats not really finding all that much just yet. Yeah, looks though Astrea again on top of this base 9. This mine's obviously huge as disruptor shots continue to fly off over the left-hand side of the screen. Stats will just not be able to get in on top of this properly, and once again is losing his army. A split scenario. He's going to blink in now, but disruptors will connect. Astrea is going to have too much, and we're going to a game 5.
Yeah, even with the disruptor still alive, Stats knows it's not going to happen. GG, Astrea ties up that series. My God, this is what I was waiting for, Wardy. This is the kind of game I was waiting for. But guys, we are going to go to a short break before going to game number 5. Please don't go anywhere. You are watching the DreamHack SC2 Masters Round 8.
never judge a North American player's DT usage. Lessons learned here today. I mean, obviously the expert Fear Dragon of North America knew much better than I did. I have been educated. Max Angel, Astrea, let's go. 2-2 tied up, and he could do it, Fear Dragon. We could have 2 NA players in the semifinals if he can just win one more map. And we could have no Koreans. That's what's on the line right now. Stats must win to keep a Korean player alive in the season finals of the DreamHack Masters.
I'm gonna put it another way, Wardy. The American players will knock out both American players will knock out every single Korean left in this tournament. If Astrea wins this. Because Nebel have knocked out TY, and Astrea will have knocked out Stats if Astrea wins this.
Oh, enter your player, dude. I know you want to enter. Just take it away.
Thank you for giving me him. Down here in the bottom right-hand side of the map, one of the sexiest mans alive, one of the most powerful clowns alive. He is Alpha X's Astrea.
In the upper left-hand side, can he keep the Korean region alive in this tournament? It is Stats.
So Wardy, we do actually have a little difference already with the low ground gateway on a map that doesn't have like the high ground ramp and everything, like we have a Pillars of Gold or anything, coming out from Stats this time. So Stats looking like he wants to go for that 1 gate expand you were talking about, but we'll see how Astrea responds to it.
Yeah, it'll be, this is going to be a fun comparison to the last game where everybody was like, okay, I'm going to go 1 gate expand. I am too. Problem is, this time Astrea does not come across the map, right? So he has no scout information on this early. Now, he does bring a probe to the left-hand side, but by not scouting, he lets this get up right away. So this is a good win already from Stats. If Astrea goes in now, sees what's up, he can pull back and make use of this pylon. I kind of like it. It feels like this pylon gives him options based on what he scouts right now.
Yeah, actually, you're right. The timing of it is really close to when that cyber cord finished. So like you said, he's going to move in. The probe just sees this, and immediately he can go back to that pylon. He might be late if you want to drop down, say, a robo or something. He might be late by like 3 seconds, if that. Yeah. Is he going to?
He's going to do something, right? There's no way he's not. He will prioritize Stalkers and Warp Gate, which has me thinking robo, maybe?
Yeah.
I mean, Robo makes the most sense. There's obviously an interesting turnaround from obviously Stats doing something similar earlier. He went for the early Robo against Nexus first of Astrea. Now, the thing is, you've got to remember this. This is a weirder map to 1 gate expand on because there's no ramp up. So you're immediately fighting same level into this natural, and that's an amazing start. And you've also got to think, like, I mean, this is meant to be holdable, otherwise people wouldn't 1 gate expand, but I just feel like without a ramp, it makes it that much more difficult. Let's see what Stats can do.
Ooh, Stats actually might scout this out with this probe. We'll see exactly what the scouting patterns look like. Oh my god, the probe is going to actually dart around to the other side. Now, I do want to mention one other difference that's going to actually enable Stats to have a better defense here. He went for a second Stalker. If you remember in game 2 when Astrea did this, he went for fast sentries. And that also means he didn't have a whole lot of firepower behind his defense. So that is okay. Actually, you know, now that I'm thinking about it, no, he did make the 2 Stalkers because he chased out, right? I guess.
Well, he went double gateway, right? So he put his first double gate. So it's a little bit different in general, but he did at some point switch into sentries. What's interesting here is I still feel like Stats will have, you're not wrong, he will have more Stalkers right away, right? Because he didn't lose the Stalkers out on the map. They weren't caught out of position and so on. So let's see. I mean, 16 to 6 army supply. We're talking about the power of shield batteries right now as we get set up to go. And this probe is just going to wander in and be like, hello, anything happening in this main base? Not really. Absolutely nothing at all, in fact.
Yeah, because he's already seen that there is the Immortal and a lot of Stalkers at his front door. He's already built a 2nd shield battery, now adding on a 3rd shield battery and a 4th shield battery. I do just want to quickly note if these Stalkers start losing ground when that War Prism arrives, there is 1 pylon for all of those, Wardy, and, you know, I feel like that's something Stats should be aware of soon.
Yeah, I mean, this is some stuff to look at here. Is Astrea going to start building up shield batteries of his own? It kind of feels like it, right?
Yeah,
I like it. Man, kill this pylon, please.
I guess he's going to go for, like, the safe damage over here. He's going to go for Stalkers with a Force Field, which is really nice.
I feel like the pylon is safe damage. It's not that far forward. I know there's another one about to finish up, but, well, this works too. He's just killed every shield battery. This is so good for Astrea.
This is beautiful. And actually, funny enough, the Immortal for stats, even though it does snag the Sentry, it doesn't exactly do extra damage to the Sentry, so it takes a little bit longer. And now the Cyber Core taking a lot of damage. You're already see the shield batteries coming up over your first Astrea. It says, I just killed all of your shield batteries, and I'm going to have more than you. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, having offensive shield batteries really makes this a bit of a challenge. Stats is going to go for Immortal number 2, though, right? And that's something Astrea has not gone for at all. So that's something to keep in mind. If there's an Immortal advantage here from Stats, this becomes a very different scenario, perhaps, even against shield batteries. Good force field, perfect force field to pick away at this gateway, and pylons at the front. And right now, Astrea is still making this happen. He's killing a lot of probes. He needs to be careful of his Immortal. It gets to a shield battery and just about gets healed before he takes another shot.
Yeah, just remember also, by the way, that there is only 2 gateways over here for Stats, so if he loses that other gateway, he's down to 1 gateway worth of production and 1 robo. That's all he's going to have.
He can only warp in.
Very important.
Can only build Zealots right now anyway. He's still waiting for the Cyber Core, and that's been part of the problem. Maybe even why he decided to add on a second Immortal or so to spend his money. Gets the Prism. No, sorry, the shield battery had it. It just about kept alive. Oh, that was a dive from Astrea, and I don't know if it worked. With 2 Immortals up, I really think this Immortal count is Stats' lifeline in this game now. And for now, it is holding. These Immortals are healthy. They still have the Prism to Micro, and there's a 3rd Immortal about to join the fight, Fear Dragon.
Yeah, I would not hate if Astrea started warping in Adepts or something just to tank the damage from the Immortals. Force Stats to target fire a little bit more, but those Immortals, without the shield battery to heal them up, they are getting lower and lower, but he's just keeping these Immortals alive with the Warp Prism. That Warp Prism is his lifeline alongside these Immortals.
Super battery finally comes down. Honestly, I like it because it will just keep everything healed up again. These Immortals are surviving again and again. The batteries of Astrea are about to be out of energy, and that's actually kind of a problem here. With only 1 Immortal, there is now 3 of them still firing away. He has finally lost 1. Is it enough for Astrea? Oh my god, this is so close to Dragon. His Immortal cannot be healed anymore, though, so he can't take any more hits on it.
Yeah, this is actually so dangerous right now. I actually want to note at this point, Stats, he's actually on those 2 bases, but he's not mining for the natural. If he ever finds an opportunity, though, both these players are going to start mining out from their mains pretty soon, and Stats will be able to at least transfer a few workers to the natural and have slightly better mining.
Ooh.
The Warp Prism goes to the main. This is such a ballsy maneuver here from Astrea, but I guess there's just not any Stalkers to punish it.
The Immortal came in at the right time to kind of make that be okay anyways, right? Because the Immortal actually wins a fight against 4 Stalkers unless the Micro is really on point. Maybe now you can come back over to the front and fight before that Immortal repositions, but he's lost his position. And of course, Stats is holding with a Nexus advantage. Astrea is pushed back and still trying to make something happen in the main. I mean, this is what he has to do. He has to buy some time, deal some damage, and I imagine Expanded Home, he's got the money for it, and he's heavily supply blocked, so he doesn't really have any other option.
Yeah, there's still only 1 Stalker out for Stats. So again, like, this Warp Prism is still kind of hard for Stats to punish, but like you said, it's hard for Stats to punish in a situation where Stats can afford to take damage. So it's definitely not the end of the world there for Stats to deal with some of that. And I also want to remember, or just note, Stats did have that Proxy Pylon on the other side of the map. So if he finds an opportunity, well, he's got his own Warp Prism on the other side of the map now with both Immortals. So maybe he won't need that Proxy Pylon.
Yeah, Probe goes down. Nexus taking some hits. This is really problematic. He just recalled everything to the main base. I mean, that is a win in itself for Stats because he's even going to get the cancel. Okay, well. Here, Dragon, I hate to say it, but it's not looking good for your boy Astrea.
No, it's definitely not. But, you know, I have to say, even though this is absolutely a dire situation, I'm not going to pretend or paint this otherwise. I do think that Astrea is very good in these kind of situations where it looks like he's very down now, and he's going for one of the most microable units for comebacks in the game. He's got the Robo Bay finished up on 1 base. And he's also buying a lot of time with his own Immortals, having even up the worker count again. I mean, how good is an expansion if you don't actually have the workers to mine from both bases with?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's very true, but also Astrea's just mining out of his main base, so he kind of needs his expansion anyway, right? Like, that's the sort of stage of the game we're talking about. The Disruptor, okay, with the 7 probes going down, a Disruptor on the way, I will not lie, I have a bit more hope from Astrea than when I made my previous statement, you know. Things definitely took a good 20 seconds or so for him, and it looks a bit better, but it's not unplayable for Stats, obviously. He's in still control. He's still got the base advantage by a little bit. He's going to come out on a worker lead as well. It's these Disruptors that could be game-changing. Stats chooses to go into Twilight and hence Blink, and then +1. So he sets up for a later game, which Astrea means he will get into those Disruptors, and that always means there's a chance in PvP.
Yeah, absolutely. But like you were saying, this is going to be a tough road ahead for Astrea. He is undoubtedly behind right now and trying to make a comeback. So he's able to deflect the Warp Prism at least, but that is also going to just lead into the rest of the army over here for Stats moving forward. I believe Stats has been using his Hallucinating Phoenix to just move and like scout around that Warp Prism. I think this is the first reveal of that Disruptor.
I think it is. It's going to go down, though. I mean, he caught the Prism. There's another Disruptor from the left. Why is it over there? I have no idea. It's going to get 3 Stalkers and an Immortal. There's still 2 Immortals here. And the problem right now for Astrea is that Disruptor just will never come off cooldown in time. Is there a new Disruptor that just got made or anything? There is one from Astrea. It's coming down the ramp. Can it make the hold? It needs to connect dead center. It needs to not get killed. No, not like this. Super bad.
Oh my god, it's alive.
No, it's going to stay alive. It hit both Immortals.
He's gonna win this fight. He kills both Immortals now, and now Stats, he's still somehow, of course, gonna be even-ish on supply, and that's because he's been making workers behind all this and everything. And there's actually also the Adepts that shade into the main base, denying mining. So Stats is still not in a bad position, but Astrea is still in this game with that shield battery overcharge on the Disruptor.
You know, I didn't get a chance to say it out loud, but I just didn't like the attack from Stats. There was no need for him to attack, right? Because he was setting up for +1, he's setting up for Blink. They were all things that had no impact on that fight. And, especially into Disruptors, it started off okay, but that's the power of Disruptors. All it takes is one Disruptor, and now Stats lost way more than he ever needed to. He could have just been in a much more comfortable position waiting for Blink. Maybe you could argue cleaning out the Disruptor count has its value and has some potential, but, I mean, that's such a hard call to make.
I'm going to +1 that and say I don't like that this move out that much from Astrea, because look, now we see the double Adepts make their way into the main base. Astrea's not super prepared for that. I think he was trying to do a sick flanking maneuver with the Disruptors himself. He's going to be able to snag at least a few units here, but he knows that he has a worse army right now outside of the Disruptors, so the Disruptors have to hit, and he's taking economic damage. He's going to lose a Disruptor here. I feel like this was a very unnecessary move out for him.
Yeah, it's one of those games where both players, it's extremely difficult to judge exactly where you're at. And it's very difficult to make the right calls, the Chris calls, which you've been, neither of these guys have been in this situation multiple times before, right? It's so scrappy, it's so weird, it played out interestingly early. It's a very different game to what anyone's used to playing. Oh my god, I forgot there was a robo over here. That's
why the Disruptor...
Yeah, I know, it just clicked. Oh my god, I had no idea why the Disruptor came from the left side. It was built on the proxy robo. This game, man.
That's actually amazing. But hey, I mean, Astrea was able to keep one of the Disruptors alive. He's not actually making more Disruptors, though. He's making Immortals just to have tank ability to his army. And with Blink done, these Stalkers can escape out of there. Now the Disruptor is on cooldown, so I like that move from Astrea. He uses the Force Fields to buy himself a bit of time. But this is still a scary moment because Stalkers have Blink, Wardy, and this is the area where you can blink up into the main base.
Adepts across the map, though, and now Astrea, if he sinks those Adept shots up, will be able to finally deal some damage himself. Would put him on a worker lead. Even though Stats has taken an extra base, he's finally got them synced up. So that's kind of what he needed. This is good damage. Stats sits with a +1 advantage, but again, you're fighting into Disruptors, and that is never, ever a good thing.
Yeah, and I think that Stats is going to say, all right, not worth it. I have a third base. Even though if I lost workers, I have a third base that's about to finish up. I can do light, uncommitted pressure with a Warp Prism. I do not need to force the issue over here, and I do like that decision from Stats. Gonna be able to find a pylon that was just starting up, finds a Stalker over here that was trying to protect the pylon. Double Immortal is gonna be pretty good at dealing with that. And remember, Astrea did not have a Twilight count.
Play on the natural. He's just blinked onto the natural expansion to try and fight, and there's a Disruptor to buy some time. It's a cool idea. He realized how much was in the main base, and it was just Disruptors defending, so he took the opportunity. Doesn't find much, but it's looking for chances like that where you can maybe obviously really find an advantage and open this game up a little bit further.
Yeah, Astrea leaves a lot of units patrolling in the main base, and that in and of itself is a victory there if the units over at the front door for Stats to decide to continue poking forward, because it's just a fewer units that are actually going to deal a lot of damage to him. It's really just the Disruptors that are quite scary right now. And Stats is finally saying, okay, my third base is finished. It's mining right now. You don't have a third base. I've done the damage I needed to. I'll leave the very mobile Stalkers out on the map. Gonna pull back all the other units. And these alone will try to find little bits of damage in a very uncommitted way.
Couple probes getting picked off. Everything counts for so much right now. The biggest part of this has got to be that third base of stats, right? Having the extra income to make up for the fact that he's playing against disruptors and he might be a little bit less efficient. That is absolutely huge. And disruptor counts back at 4, so it's definitely going to be impactful. You can see Astrea trying to play catch up now on that Twilight Council and Forge play.
Oh, the disruptors, where are they? Okay, there they are.
A little bit further back.
Yeah. All right, little trades back and forth. The +1 weapons is about to turn into +2 weapons over here for stats, which gets very scary for Astrea. But like you said, the disruptors, they are like the ultimate defensive tool here, as long as you have them in a good position and you have enough supporting units. And okay, Astrea's staying really on top of this. He has to continue this or he will not have the economy to come back in this game.
Yep, no, I mean, you've got to hit some shots with these disruptors, I think. Otherwise, it's going to be really tough. I mean, +2 versus +1. It has to be the disruptors because of that, right? You know, skirmishing with stalkers just doesn't work well for you at the moment. Unfortunately, disruptors don't care about upgrades, but that really means that that's your only option. He's going to get the prism. I think that's a good pick-off anyway. Blinks to the side, which means he'll continue to fight. He's got one more disruptor kill, so he'll cancel every disruptor shot stats. Going in with the confidence. Obviously, those stalkers having +2 there really helps to make sure those disruptors are being one-hit, because if any of those doesn't get one shot, that's a lot of dead stalkers, and Astrea goes across this map to maybe kill the third.
And remember, guys, even though it looks like, oh, the supplies aren't that bad right now, it's, again, about the +2 weapons and the fact that Astrea is still relying on those disruptors. Having the Astrea's disruptor count reset is brutal for him. Even though he is finding a couple stalkers here and there, he is getting out now a third disruptor, so he's starting to replenish that count. He's going to start to even up the weapon upgrades a little bit with +1 weapons, but man, 40 +3 weapons coming out. I
like this from stats. This Warping of Zealots, he's got charge now, because I really do think this army of Astrea doesn't really stand up for itself very well, because the disruptors count just got reset heavily. And now we're going to go diving in. There's going to be Zealots to charge in too. Hey, it's a good disruptor shot, don't get me wrong, but you've got everything else still following. So now your disruptors are all on cooldown. Blink in. Okay, there's one disruptor that just spawned. Stats will split against it. He's got 4 immortals behind it. He's got too much. The +2 against +1. We talked about it a lot. That will do it for stats as he goes through to the semifinals. An epic performance from Astrea, though, as he goes out fighting.